Hey everybody, my name is Lee McCormack and I'm with RipRow, and this is Kevin Stifler who's doing the shooting right now. We are in the process of assembling and shipping the first real production run. So I want, when you get your RipRow, it comes with paperwork that kind of shows you how to do everything, but I want to give you a video to help you out. So before you start assembling your RipRow, get your tools together. You're going to want to have a 4mm hex key, a 6mm hex key, and an 8mm hex key. If you want to adjust the height of the saddle, you'll use a 5mm hex key. You're also going to need a 13mm socket and a 15mm socket. If you don't have sockets, that's fine. You can use wrenches. You could even use a pair of vice grips for all I care. When you open your RipRow box, you'll see something like this, right? There will be a bag in here that will contain your packing list. You see that? And one of us, either Kevin or I right now, goes through the whole list to make sure you have all the pieces. We write your serial number here and we sign it. You also will get instructions on how to assemble the RipRow, and we're going to do that in the video. And we'll also give you a quick start workout guide. So once you get your box open and you have your tools lined up, I suggest getting an open area and then start staging your parts. What we've done is, we've done our best to do all the assembly ahead of time that we can. So you'll get a bunch of sub-assemblies and they'll go together pretty easily. Alright, the first step will be to attach the frame to the deck. And here's how I do it. I hope you've been stretching so you can straddle. Here goes the bubble wrap, right? So you're going to use an 8mm Allen key and a 15mm socket, or a 15mm wrench, or maybe just a pair of vice grips, that's fine, okay? And remove, this is the main pivot bolt. Here's the nut, hang on to the metal sleeve, steel sleeve, and here's the bolt with a washer under the head. Leave the grease on the sleeve, okay, and just slide it. This is a pretty sweet brass bushing that we made, and the steel sleeve goes into the brass bushing. Okay, see that little bit of a grease? That's fine. Get it right here on the outside of the brass. Bring it around to the other side and do the same. It just takes a very thin sheen. This is really like good, expensive, thick grease. Okay, wipe your fingers. Now check it out. It doesn't really matter which direction this goes in. I like to point it forward. All right, so we're gonna line up this hole, you know, the main pivot hole with the brackets on the frame. And we're gonna get that bolt with the, remember, make sure that the washer's under the head. We're gonna slide it through, and now we can just thread this nut on. Okay, and then what we want to do here, this is a big, very strong bolt, man. We really over-engineered this thing. So what we'll do is we want to tighten this. You want to tighten this until the rails on the aluminum frame are contacting the steel sleeve. We have the frame on the deck. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install the shocks. We're going to do this from the bottom up. So I find it useful to turn the deck on its side, and then the frame happens to be like a nice little support. Ta-da! And so you'll see in here we've already pre-installed. These are the shock bushings, and they're held in place with a bolt, with a washer, and a nut. You're going to want to use a 13mm socket, or like I said, a pair of vice grips. So I have a 6mm Allen key and a 13mm socket. And when we put these together here, we just snug it all up so it doesn't fall apart. Okay, and we're gonna pull the bushings out and we'll set them aside. Okay, we'll do the same thing on the other side, the other end. So again, this is a 6mm hex key with a 13mm socket. okay? We'll just set that aside. Now I'm gonna grab one of the dampers. It doesn't, and one of the shocks. It doesn't really matter which is which. We've set them to number 1, so they're easy to pull. You'll find out 12 is hard. So this is important. You ready? This resistance sticker needs to face up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to point the resistance sticker up toward the frame, and I'm gonna put the shock right through this hole, through the deck. And then what I do is I just place these bushings in, and then I need to get the bushings in between the metal rails. Can you guys see that? I'm gonna switch sides here. I'm gonna control the shock from the other end. I'm gonna slide it into place. I still have the washer underneath the head of the bolt. So from the top here, I can see when all the holes line up. And I just drop this guy through. Of course, it will be a little wiggle. That's easy, right? And the nut goes on. I'm just gonna like hand snug it. I'm gonna come around to the other side, okay? I have the second damper. The only thing you really need to know and worry about is the resistance is futile. No, it's not. But, and it should point upward. So I'm gonna take resistance, point it toward where the frame is. I'm gonna push it through here, okay? Now, these guys should slide right in, and they'll slide right in here like this. If the RipRow you have, if these rails are a little too close to fit these in here, another way to go is go toward the middle where there's some flex, put these guys in the middle, and then just twist. That's a good trick. So we'll line this up so that the holes in the shock spacers line up with the holes in the frame, in the deck rather. And then remember, keep the washer under the head of the bolt, and it should slide in pretty sweetly, pretty smooth, and we'll get that nut underneath. When I've been testing this version now for I don't know, a month or two, I don't know how long, and I've been traveling with it, and usually I can get the machine usable in about 10 minutes from my packing box. So it doesn't take long. So now I've reversed the ratchet. Again, 13mm socket, 6mm hex key. This does not have to be crazy tight. You'll go until you feel the edges of the deck of this rail connect with the Delrin bushings, and we'll make it nice and snug. The wear, the movement happens between the shock eyelet and the Delrin, so the bolt can be nice and tight. And by the way, in earlier designs, we had a lot greater distance, and we were using thinner shocks, thinner bolts. And so some of our testers, like my friend Chad, the linebacker, and my friend Curtis, the enduro racer, were bending bolts. But these things, you're not gonna be bending these. So these are tight. I've rolled the RipRow back to upright. I'm gonna straddle it. I have a 6mm Allen key and a 13mm socket. These bolts, we just kind of snug them when we assemble these so they won't fall off. So we did our best to assemble everything we can ahead of time. So take the nut off. When you pull out the bolt, make sure you keep track of these bushings. Pro tip, put the bolt right here in the slot so it doesn't fall off the RipRow while you're sitting on the RipRow. I'm not telling you how I know that one. I'm getting rid of this other nut. And then again, make sure you keep track of these spacers. Kevin just sat on some bubble wrap. Okay, so now we'll start with this one. This shock spacer right here just limits the travel of the shock to prevent damaging the shock. You want to have the open side pointing down, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll put these guys in here. They should go in really, really easily, okay? Extend this guy. And then, as you can imagine, we're going to line up all the holes. We're going to line up the holes inside the bushing with the hole on the frame. Boom. bolt goes in. Remember, keep the washer under the head of the bolt. Okay, that's cool. I'm gonna scooch back a little bit. This is gonna look silly. Just bear with me. I'm gonna pull this out. 1 is kind of hard, but 12 is very hard, by the way, in terms of resistance. So I'm gonna line this guy up. Okay. Done. Easy peasy. The original versions of the RipRow and the ones that you might have seen on the website when you placed your order use quick release pins. And we were thinking that it was really, really important that you be able to take it apart really quickly. But what we found was that the bolts are stronger, they're simpler, and they're easy to take on and off anyway. So we went to bolts instead of these quick release pins. So just like on the lower shock mounts, you want to tighten these bolts until the aluminum frame is really in contact with the Delrin bushing, and then snug it from there. Now we're going to put the handlebars on the stem. If you're a cyclist, you've probably done this before. So we're just going to loosen these bolts. We just make them hand snug here at the factory so that they don't fall out in shipping. Set these clamps aside. This is basically just like putting a new handlebar on your mountain bike or your road bike or your cross bike, or I suppose your moto too, although the bolts are a lot bigger on a motorcycle. Okay, now we'll put the bar in. Of course, the logo faces forward, and so the way this is all done, okay, you can kind of eyeball. You want, of course, the logo in the middle, and then see this the little point on the DNA logo right there. If you line that point up with like the top of the stem right here, that's going to give you a really neutral handlebar sweep. It should feel a lot like the bike you ride. If you don't like the feel of that, of course, you can rotate your bars forward or back to suit your taste. You can also, if you have a preference for handlebar, you can put your own handlebar on. This is a 31.8 millimeter bar, so any 38.1 millimeter bar will work. So when your handlebar is installed, the logo's in the middle, in this opening, and the little points of the logo point more or less at the gap right here. We're going to attach the top tube stem handlebar assembly to the frame. If you look inside the frame, the bolt from the adjuster knob is sticking into the channel. You're gonna want to back out the adjuster knob so the bolt's not sticking into the channel. Then you can just slide this guy in. And then here's how you will adjust the height, okay, for yourself. You stand in your preferred stance. You'll stand as tall as you can with your arms dead straight, and you'll tighten the knob. It's that simple. If you like, you can also attach the seat assembly. And that's simple to do. There are these 4 bolts on the frame. You'll just remove those guys. Any of you old school mountain bikers might remember the mountain cycles, mountain bikes, and like their cool bike was called the San Andreas, and it had a removable seat mast. This is a bit of an homage to that. But also this design allows you to RipRow without the seat or with the seat. Okay, and then you can imagine what's going to happen next. I'm going to set the bolts here on the deck so I don't drop them. I'm going to line the seat assembly up. I'll get on your side, right? Line it up, get the bolt in there, start a couple threads. Do it by hand, of course, so you can feel what's happening down there. So once all these 4 bolts are snug, you're ready to go. The RipRow comes with these pedals, which are optional but sweet. If you want to use the RipRow without the pedals, you can stand anywhere you want on this deck. The standard places to stand would be in moto stance with the balls of your feet over the middle slots. You can also go to a left foot forward bike stance or a right foot forward bike stance. And then with the pedals, they make it more realistic for riding, and also they really make they put a lot more demand on your system, like your legs, your core, everything, to stay balanced. So these fit into the slots. So I'm gonna put these in moto stance. And then really easy, you don't just stand on them. Or if you're a horseback rider, you might put these in this stance too, stirrup stance. And now it's a little bit more realistic. And it's super easy, of course, like between sets, if you want to switch to, let's say, a right foot forward bike stance, you can do this. Or a left foot forward bike stance. So that's how you put your RipRow together. I hope you have fun with it.